Hi, and welcome to this online course. This course is being offered absolutely free of cost to ensure that it reaches all those in need, irrespective of social and economic circumstances. Also, through these courses, we want to achieve our vision to improve the lives of 1 million people. So please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do go through the do's and don'ts of online learning before you start. Pause the video wherever required and make notes. Wish you all the very best and happy learning. Hi, and welcome to Certified Sales Expert, free course to help companies drive excellence in sales. First of all, let's get into the session plan. We will start with introduction to the course and course objectives. We will then define what is sales process. In this session, we will also understand the difference between sales and marketing. For a salesperson, creating a great first impression is very, very important. We will understand how to create a great first impression using rule of 12. Just interaction would not be enough, but it has to end in an engaging conversation when it comes to selling. So in the next section, we will understand routine probing versus engaging conversation, and we will also learn a very interesting technique called QUIP. Objections of customers in sales is very, very normal. How to handle these objections will be learned in the next session of objection handling. In this, we will learn a technique called LAER. Negotiation, which is part of the sales process, will be understood in detail in the next section, and we will learn how to negotiate to win-win. We will then understand the last stage of the sales cycle, which is closing the sale. Before ending the session, we will have a case study or exercise. Case study and exercise and quiz will be mandatory for certification. We will end the course with a session on queries and feedback. Let us first get into introduction to this course and course objectives. This course, Certified Sales Expert, is designed to achieve the below mentioned three key objectives. 1. To ensure learners understand selling and sales process in depth. To imbibe important skills required for selling. And to train learners on techniques for successful closing of sales and lasting customer engagement. Overall, our objective for this course, Certified Sales Expert, is to bring about a huge change in the learners when it comes to sales. After going through this session, they should be able to deal with their customers more effectively, as well as they should be able to close their sales and also engage with their customers and not just interact with them. Let us begin with the first session, defining sales and sales process. Before we do that, let us understand the difference between two terms, sales and marketing. Many people actually get confused between these two terms and they think they are interchangeable, but actually they are very different. Marketing is trying to get the company produce what the customer wants. Selling is trying to get the customer to want what the company produces. Marketing is actually much wider and dynamic as compared to sales. Compared to marketing, sales is a very narrow concept. Marketing revolves around need and interest of the buyer or the customer. But sales revolves around needs and interest of the seller. Marketing, if you think, is a outside in perspective, whereas selling is inside out perspective. Marketing can be called as a pull strategy, whereas sales or selling is normally a push strategy. Marketing also involves a lot of activities, and sales or selling is part of all these activities which are there under marketing. I hope you are clear about what is the difference between sales and marketing now. I've given the information which is actually a little conventional or traditional. Nowadays, sales also is considered much broader than what it was few years back. What is selling? Selling is not just a term. It is a complex mixture of a lot of skills and trades put together to do a process of sale. What are those traits? Persuading, helping, convincing, resolving, interacting, following, demonstrating, and listening. With whom does the salesperson do all these? Of course, with the customer or the consumer. Persuading is the art of making sure that the customer is convinced with the product and the pricing, and he pays the price to get the product for him. Very important is to help the customer understand about the product or service. Convincing is of course an inseparable part of persuading. Customers might have a lot of issues or queries which needs to be resolved by a salesperson. Interaction is very common. From the point the customer comes to the company or the organization till the point he buys the product or service, and even after that, interaction has to go on. Following up. Most of the times customer will not end up in buying the product or service immediately. So follow-up is very important. Demonstrating. Customer will not know how to use the product or the service for which a product demo would be required, which is again a skill or a trait required for a salesperson. Last but not the least, listening. Listening is a very important part of communication, and more so for a salesman. It is not just speaking, which a lot of people think, but it is listening to what customer wants, listening to the customer needs, and then providing the exact match to the needs and wants of the customer. Let us now understand how a sales process is. Sales process can be broadly classified into three big stages. The first stage is called pre-sales. Then comes the largest chunk, which is sales process, and then there is a part or a stage called post-sales. Let us understand this entire process in a little more detail now. In this, there are 7 stages shown, starting from prospecting to support. Prospecting is the stage which comes under pre-sales stage. What is prospecting? Any company or organization should have a prospective list of clients or customers. Now, they are not already a customer of the organization, but are having high probability of becoming a customer. How is prospecting done? There are a lot of ways which companies use to do prospecting, like cold calling, email marketing, digital marketing, getting databases of the right target audience, talking to the old customers and getting referrals, and so on. Please remember, prospecting, though is not a stage in the normal sales process, plays a very important role. It is said that you should have such a big prospect list that you don't have time to contact all of them. That's a trait of a good salesperson. Next starts the actual sales process with approach. From approach till negotiation and closure is the actual sales process stage. Approach is where the customer first approaches the company or organization. Approach can be physical, it can even be virtual, like a phone call or an online inquiry form, etc. Then comes the third stage of interview. Interview is where the actual conversation or the interaction starts between the customer or the prospective customer and the salesperson. This is where the salesperson has to really use all the skills which were talked in the earlier session, like listening skills, communication, convincing, persuading. All these are done in this stage of interview. What is the main objective of this stage? To understand the needs of the customer. You might have 10 different products and services, but you can't offer everything. You should offer something which very easily and perfectly solves the problem or the issue or the need of the customer. Once this stage is completed, then comes the stage of proposal. You might have 10 products, but you might come to a conclusion after an engaging conversation with the customer that product X is what is most suited for the customer, and that is what you will propose. Once the customer agrees to this, then comes the stage of demonstration of the product. Now this is called product demo. In many places, the product demo is done physically, virtually. They use technology to do product demo. Many ways it is done. So once the demonstration is completed, then is the stage of negotiation. Now negotiation in itself is a process which we will talk about in further sections. But yes, before the sale is closed, there will be a stage of negotiation. This is where the pricing, the other terms and conditions, finance options, mode of payment, and all these things are discussed, and the sale is closed. The big irony is most of the salesmen think that at this point the sales process is closed. Please remember, the sales process never closes with the close of the sale or purchase of a product or service, but it also goes to post-sales phase where it is customer support. A great salesman knows this and he keeps in touch with the customer even after the sale is complete. It is not the responsibility of only the customer support team to support the customer after the purchase, but also the person who has sold the product to the customer. Hope this entire sales process is clear. Just to summarize, the sales process has three major stages: pre-sales, sales, and post-sales. Prospecting is a pre-sales stage. Approach, interview, proposal, demonstration, negotiation, and closing forms the actual sales process. Customer support is post-sales stage. As sales process forms the foundation of this entire course, let me give an actual example to make this more clear to you. Let's take an example of a two-wheeler. How does a salesman do prospecting to sell a two-wheeler? He can call his earlier customers for referrals, or if he has a list of old customers whom he knows that they have already purchased the two-wheeler, say 6 years back, maybe they might be looking to change or upgrade their two-wheeler. This is how prospecting is done. Now prospecting is done. The customer walks into the showroom. That is when approach will happen. That is the second stage. Approach is where the salesman will introduce himself and start understanding the needs of the customer, and that is the third stage of interview. After talking, interacting, and engaging with the customer, he'll understand his needs and propose a product. In a two-wheeler showroom, he might have different kinds of two-wheelers. He can have a scooter, he can have a racing bike, and many more. Depending on what the customer needs, now the salesperson proposes one particular two-wheeler. Once he gets a okay from the customer, then is the stage of demonstration. How is a demo done in two-wheelers? Maybe he'll first of all show the two-wheeler from outside, explaining all the FAB or features, advantages, and benefits. Then he might go for a test ride. The test ride is also part of demonstration here. Once the customer is back from the test ride, is the stage of negotiation. This is where things like the finance mode of payment, the booking amount for the vehicle, all these things are discussed. Once this negotiation is closed, is when the customer will purchase the two-wheeler. This is where a lot of salesperson will close the sales cycle, but no, even after the purchase, at least till the first or second service of the two-wheeler, the salesperson who has sold the two-wheeler to the customer should be in touch with the customer. That is where the last stage of the sales comes, which is customer support. Now let's understand what are some key traits of a good salesman. To excel in any profession, we normally say there are three things which are required. ASK, very easy to remember. Ask, attitude, skills, and knowledge. Now let's also understand ask for a good salesman. We'll start with knowledge. A good salesman needs to have thorough knowledge about the product, service, and the process of the sales of whatever he is selling. 2. Skills. What are the skills required? Listening skills, questioning skills, negotiating skills, and of course, closing the sales. All these are skills which can be learned and developed. A good salesman should have some kind of attitude. The attitude should display confidence. He should be persistent, determined, helpful, and willing to make long-term relationships. Making long-term relationships is important for any profession, but when it comes to sales, this is the most important trait which a good salesman should have. After prospecting, during the very first stage of the sales process, that is approach, creating a good first impression becomes very important for a salesman. Let's now understand how can you create a great first impression. There is a rule of 12 to create a great first impression. What is this rule? First impression is created in just 12 seconds by observing 3 12s of a person. What are those 3 12s? 1. The first 12 steps the person takes. 2. 12 inches above shoulder, that is the face of the person. And 3. The first 12 words spoken by that person. So, as a salesman, you need to be very aware of these 3 things in order to create a great first impression on the prospective customer. When the customer walks into your organization, company, showroom, etc., remember to walk very confidently towards that person. He'll be observing your steps, your appearance, and your confidence, which is shown in your walking style. Next, he'll be observing your face. Face is the index of mind, so show confidence on your face. Have a good smile, make eye contact. 3. How you open the conversation with the customer. Choose your first few words very carefully because that's what ends up in creating an impression. If you create a great first impression, taking the conversation forward will be very easy afterwards. Hope this is clear. First impression is formed in just first 12 seconds by observing the first 12 steps, 12 inches above your shoulder, that is your face, and the first 12 words you speak. Once the approach stage is completed, next comes the interaction or interview stage. So let's understand more about routine probing versus engaging conversation in this session. To begin with, what is the difference between these two terms, probing and engaging? Probing mainly focuses on questioning. Traditionally, salesmen, the moment they introduce themselves, they sit down. Next moment, they start asking a lot of questions. Sir, what is your requirement? How much mileage are you expecting? Have you already thought of some two-wheeler? All these are basically questions. Probing is actually a little offensive. It creates a stressful environment. Remember, customer is very new to your place. It can be your dealership, showroom, your company, organization, etc. You are used to that place, not the customer. So when you start bombarding the customer with a lot of questions, you might feel a little offensive and the environment will become stressful. What are the examples of probing? Police questioning.
If someone is a suspect in some of the police cases, police will call that person to the station and start asking questions, right? Traditional salespeople actually do this kind of questioning. So now you can understand how offensive it can become. Old school sales inquiry. If a customer calls an organization for a sales inquiry, probing or questioning starts. This is all about probing. As you can see, it is a very negative kind of a process. Versus, now let us understand what is engaging. The focus of engaging is on conversation and not questioning. Definitely is not offensive to the customer, but it becomes a deep engagement with the customer, and definitely it creates a very conducive environment. You know, when you get into engaging conversation with anyone, forget about the customer for now. Any person, if you get into an engaging conversation with, the environment becomes very conducive and the person starts opening up. He or she will talk a lot of things which will in turn help you in proposing the right kind of a product to the customer. So remember, engaging is the most important thing and not just interaction and probing questions to the customer. What are some examples of engaging conversation? Conversational probing to understand customer needs. Now this might be a very new term for a lot of you people. What is conversational probing? This also has probing in it, but it is not a simple probing which is offensive, but it is conversational probing. The technique is very interesting, all right? You should never focus on asking any question. You are just making statements and then getting the information from the customer, whatever you need. Let me give an example. Let me continue with the same example of the two-wheeler showroom. You want to understand what is the need of the customer, right? What kind of a vehicle he is wanting to get, what is the mileage he is expecting, and so on. Don't ask this directly. How can you get this information from the customer without asking him a question? The moment you create a great first impression, the pleasantries are exchanged, probably you offer him some water, tea, coffee, etc., and you are sitting across a table. You have seen that the customer has come on his two-wheeler, current two-wheeler, and he has parked in front of the showroom. Just tell the customer, sir, you have maintained your two-wheeler really well. Now, this is not a question. This is actually a compliment, and people like compliment, okay? The moment you say this, he'll start opening up. He'll say, yes, I am in love with my two-wheeler. It has given me a very good service, 6 years, and I have made sure I made regular service of my two-wheeler, and it gives a good mileage, which I really appreciate. Now in this process, what has happened is you understand some things about this customer. He appreciates mileage. He is a person who takes good care of his two-wheeler. Some of the, I would say, information which you would need for proposing a product is already there. Mind you, have not even asked a single question till now. Now this technique is called as conversational probing. This is a very interesting technique, and it ends up in an engaging conversation with the customer without him feeling offensive, and it creates a beautiful conducive environment for the interview to go on smoothly. Let us also understand one very interesting technique called QUIP for engaging conversations. Of course, you can use it for sales and selling process. Even otherwise, if you want to develop relationships with people, you can use this technique of QUIP to engage in a conversation. What does QUIP stand for? Q stands for question, U for understand, I for imbibe, and P for pitch in. Let's take some other example apart from sales, all right? Assume that you are traveling in a train from, say, Bangalore to Hyderabad. You have some good amount of time there, you're traveling alone, and you meet someone in the train and you want to just engage in a conversation with that person, not just interaction, a conversation. So how does it happen? You first start with a question. You might ask that person, sir, where are you from? Then once you ask the question, focus on understanding what he is saying. Don't just ask question to get information, but understand. For that, listening plays a very important role. Listen not only through your ears, but through all the senses. You should be observing his body language, his tone of voice, his emotions, everything. That is how you can really listen and understand to what that person is saying. Now that person might say, I am from Bangalore, I am a localite, I'm going to Hyderabad for my project work, something like that. Now the conversation starts. So once you really understand well, next stage is to imbibe. When you imbibe that particular story, what he's saying, you can really appreciate what he's telling. You might say, I being from Bangalore, Hyderabad is not that great for me. The temperature is very high, the food is very spicy. You understood what he is saying, and then you imbibe his story. That's when you can appreciate. You can appreciate his viewpoint and say, I agree, boss. I have seen in Hyderabad it's very, very spicy. Initially, when I was working there, it was very difficult for me to adjust. Now, in a way, you have agreed, acknowledged, and also you appreciate his viewpoint. That is called the third stage of imbibing. Last, you pitch in. You know what is pitching in? You share your story. Now you understood his part of the story and you share yours. Now you can talk about, say, spicy food in Hyderabad, for example, and what kind of experience you had with that. Now this is how an engaging conversation happens. Now again, he might question. He also needs to listen well, understand, imbibe, and then pitch in with his story. This is how the process of engaging conversation goes on and on. Use this technique of QUIP not only in your personal circumstances, but definitely with your prospective customers. You can end up in engaging conversations, and in the process, you can learn a lot about the customer, his needs, wants, and you can propose a beautiful product which fulfills his requirements. When you are dealing with the customer, objections are quite normal. So let's now understand a little more detail about handling objections. For this, we will use a very interesting technique called LAER. If you have to take the same example which I have given in the earlier sessions of a two-wheeler sales, first you approach the customer or the customer approaches you, you give a great first impression, you start with the interview or conversation to understand what are the needs of the customer. It is then that you propose a particular product or a two-wheeler in your showroom. The customer agreed to the proposed two-wheeler. He took a demonstration, one physical demonstration and also a test ride. So once he comes back from the test ride, you might have some objections related to the product. Quite normal, right? You might say that, okay, compared to my current two-wheeler, this is not that smooth, or the initial pickup is a little low. How is the mileage of this bike? I'm not sure whether this bike can give the same mileage as my earlier two-wheeler. So on. There are many objections with which the customer might come up with. How to handle them? See, objections are like feedback or failures. I always say handling these things effectively is very important to succeed. So let's now understand how to handle objections. The technique for handling this is called as LAER. It is not LAYER, but it is LAER. The normal way which I teach my learners is assume that L is 1, A is 2, E is 3, and R is 4. You can assume these numbers on your floor. You can stand up and assume that currently you are standing on 1, that is L. And remember this particular small line, that is 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. That means the more times you basically do this step on the floor, it becomes very clear in your head as well. 1, you are listening. When I say 2, you move to A. A stands for acknowledge. Then when I say 3, you move to E or explore. And again, come back to 1. You are not going to 4, all right? So 1, 2, 3, 1. Now this 1, 2, 3, 1 you are doing for 3 times before you move on to the last number, which is 4. R stands for 4, which is respond. Let me explain what this technique is all about. Whenever customer comes with any objection, first of all, forget your role, forget your product, your company, just listen to what the objection is. I'm not talking about hearing, I'm talking about listening. Okay, listen very carefully. After you listen, don't just jump to respond to that particular objection. Please acknowledge, please accept whatever he is coming up with. Once you acknowledge, again don't jump to respond, explore. Any objection, it is not easy to understand in one go. You might not be very clear on what he is wanting to say, so please explore a little more. Once you do that, again he might respond. Now you have to listen again. So go to listen, acknowledge, explore once more. Do this for 3 rounds, and once you are very clear about what is the objection, is when you have to go to respond stage and respond to his particular objection. Let's take an example for better clarity. Now the customer might come back and tell you, in 4th gear, the pickup was a little less. Don't just jump to say that, no, it cannot be like that. We have worked on refinement of the engine, that this, no, nothing. He says that, please nod your head with your body language and your communication, acknowledge to what he is saying and explore a little more and ask few questions. Sir, when you say in the 4th gear, where was it? Was it when you are going uphill on the flyover? Was it when you are going on a straight road? Was it when you are trying to rev the bike? When was it? Now for that he will give one more answer. He might say, no, it was when I was trying to go uphill on the flyover on the 4th gear. It was making a little bit of noise. Again acknowledge, again explore more. Sir, at what speed were you when you are going on the flyover? Now again you are trying to explore a little more about the objection. Now he might say, before getting on the flyover, I was at around 30 kilometers per hour speed. Again listen, acknowledge. If you want to explore more, explore, and finally you can come up with your answer. Now I'm not saying just by doing this your response may be very different than what you would respond otherwise, but at least you are very clear on what is the objection. Number 2, customer feels highly valued when you do that. That will have high probability that customer will agree to whatever solution or the response you are giving. Hope this is clear. Very, very important technique for handling objections is LAER. Listen, acknowledge, explore. Listen, acknowledge, explore. Listen, acknowledge, explore, and then go to your response. As I said, listening is the most important part even in the LAER technique. Even otherwise, listening is the most important part of communication. So let's quickly understand what is this listening all about. Listening is a process similar to communication. Let's understand the process of listening first. This process starts with hearing, which is just a sensation. Right now you are hearing my sound or noise or voice. You're also able to hear a lot of other sounds around you. Now this part of sensation is completely involuntary. You have no control over it. A lot of sounds come and fall on your eardrum. That's the first stage of listening, which is hearing or sensation. Next stage is selection or sorting. Now out of so many sounds which is falling on your ear, you are basically selecting 1 or 2 particular sounds and you are sorting it for further process. This is called selection. Once you have selected, you move on to the next stage of interpretation. Not all sounds you try to interpret and make meaning out of it. There are some. Right now you are listening to my lecture or training. You are trying to interpret what I am trying to communicate to you. Now that's called interpretation or your search of meaning. You are trying to make some sense out of the sound which is falling on your ear and which you have selected and sorted. So once you interpret and find a meaning, then you move on to the next stage of listening, which is evaluation or assessment. You can think of your normal situations and you can fix in this particular process there. Whatever you listen to, you basically try to evaluate. It can be a newsreader on the television. It can be right now, whatever you are listening to me. You are not just interpreting and leaving it at that, you are trying to evaluate whether what I am saying makes sense, whether I am right, wrong. Because you're all adults, you have your own experience. You need not just say yes to whatever I am saying. You will evaluate yourself. That is called assessment. Now, let's say you did all this. First, you did hearing, then selection, interpretation, and evaluation. If you stop at this stage, still it is listening. But if you move to the last stage of response, then it becomes active listening. What is response? Response is giving a feedback. Now, feedback can be in many ways. You can, in a classroom situation or in a normal face-to-face conversation, you might just nod your head, agreeing or disagreeing to whatever is going on. Or you might give a written feedback. You might ask some question. All these are a part of giving feedback or response to what is being heard. With response only, the listening process is completed. I repeat, listening happens in 5 stages: hearing, selection, interpretation, evaluation, and response. You have to go through all the stages in order to make sure that your listening is not just listening but active listening. With a customer, please remember to actively listen before you jump on to respond, as explained to you in the LAER technique, or even when you are interviewing and getting into an engaging conversation with the customer. Now that you have handled the objections of the customer well, we now move on to the stage of negotiation. So let's get into the session of negotiate to win-win. To begin with, let us understand what is negotiation. Negotiation is the act of two parties discussing the pros and cons of a particular problem in the attempt to arrive at an agreement. Not only in sales process, if you think, negotiation happens in a lot of places in our day-to-day life. You want to go to a movie, your friend wants to go to another movie. You both start discussing about that particular thing, on which movie to go and watch on a weekend. Now the entire process is an attempt to arrive at an agreement. Husband and wife get into negotiation on so many things. Father and child, so many places we do negotiation. Next, there are 2 or 3 different terms used, like bargaining, compromise, negotiation are all the same. Let us try and understand the difference between these terms. What is bargaining? Offers and counter offers till a decision. What is the example of bargaining? So when you go to a vegetable market, the vendor says the price of the vegetable is 40 rupees a kilo. And you ask, no, it is very costly, I'll give you only 20 rupees. He says, ma'am, you don't know how costly the life has become. I can't give you so cheap. And the discussion goes on. He gives an offer of 35. You give an offer of 30. And finally, somewhere 30 or 35, you agree and decide to buy that particular vegetable. Now, this is bargaining. Is there any thought process behind it? Why did you ask for 20 rupees? Why not 10? Why not 30? Why not more than 40 what he has quoted? There is no thought process behind it. It is just a counter offer. That's it. Okay. Now that's called bargaining. Now that's very different from negotiation, mind you. Next term is compromise. So when we talk about compromise, each party or each side makes some concessions. Both the people are not that happy. That is when a compromise happens. Now this term is used in situations like two people, a couple getting divorced. There are a lot of compromises which happens. Why only divorce? Even in marriage, there are a lot of compromises. When two people become partners, they compromise on a lot of things. Now, in each side, they are making some or the other concessions there. That's why it is called a compromise. Now, let us come to the word negotiation. That's what we are talking about, right? Agreement where exchange takes place and needs are satisfied. Always remember, in negotiation, both the parties are satisfied. If either of the party is not satisfied, then you just can't call it a negotiation. It becomes probably a compromise or something else. So always keep in mind, In the process of negotiation, both the parties need to be satisfied. Now let's move on to the process of negotiation. If you remember, when I was talking about the sales process, I told that negotiation is a part of the sales process, but negotiation itself has a process. So let's understand that. Negotiation is a 5-step process and starts with preparation. Then it moves on to discussion, proposition, finalization, and the process of negotiation ends with an agreement. Let me give an example. When I was working in one of the manufacturing firms quite few years back, I was negotiating a particular agreement with a vendor, and he was a contractor whom we wanted to get the copper concentrate from the port to our plant, and there is a lot of process involved, like clearing the customs, weighing the copper concentrate in the port, bringing it to the plant in tipper. Before unloading, again the payment has to be done just to ensure that there is no leakage, theft, or pilferage in the process, and then he has to unload it in our godown. So this entire process was done by a vendor. I was negotiating a price for this, and the price is in a very interesting way. It is 3.5 rupees per metric ton. So copper concentrate is in powdered form and it is weighed in tons. Our company used to import around 13 lakh metric tons of copper concentrate every single year. Now this was an annual agreement I was negotiating, and the final price which was given in the proposal by the vendor was 3.5 rupees per metric ton. I just say that no, 3.5 is too high, I will give you only 2 rupees, and then can he give a counter offer saying that no, it is too low, I'll give only 3.25? No, it cannot happen like that, right? Because this is a huge process involving a lot of people, lot of processes. So the process of negotiation started with preparation. Both the parties, I from the company side and the vendor, whoever were coming for the negotiation from the vendor side, both prepared beforehand. So I understood what is this entire process all about, what are the costs involved, what is the mileage of a tipper, what is the cost of a tipper, what is the maintenance cost, how weighment is done, what is the cost of weighment, custom clearing charges, everything. Now all these are preparing for the negotiation. Then came a stage where the company called these vendors to the office and there was a discussion. That's the stage 2. In the discussion, a lot of things happen. Of course, we start with initial greeting, hi, hello, coffee, tea, etc. But the main discussion will focus on the price which the company has quoted in the request for proposal. So the company has quoted 3.5. We can ask why that particular price is quoted. We'll discuss on a lot of pros, cons, earlier year price of other vendors, what are the costs involved, so many things. And based on the discussion, there will be a proposition from either sides. Now, company might propose 3 rupees based on the calculations, of course, and the discussion, and probably the vendor might propose 3.25, 3 rupees 25 paisa per ton. Now that's a proposition. Again, the proposition is not final. Again, there will be some discussions, and finally there will be a finalization. So now both the parties, that is the company and the vendor, might agree at a price of 3 rupees 20 paise, for instance, after discussing with this vendor and some other vendors also. Once the finalization is done, you can't just start the work. There is an agreement which happens, based on which the work starts for the entire year. I hope this process of negotiation is very clear to you. Now you might ask, this is a very big example of business to business, but what about business to consumer or B2C? If you take a small example of a two-wheeler or a mobile phone or anything, even there is a preparation, there is a discussion, proposition is also there. There is some terms and conditions which are finalized, and in place of agreement, it can be an invoice, it can be delivery of the vehicle, it can be anything like that. So still the process of negotiation remains the same. Let us also understand one more thing, which is called BATNA. BATNA is a technique of negotiation which you have to keep in mind. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to Negotiated Agreement. Always remember, once the agreement is done, that does not mean that that is the final thing. Especially in B2B scenario, many things keep on changing. Like now, if you think, huge crisis has come in the world called COVID crisis, based on which many things might have changed. If you read newspapers, in malls, the store owners are negotiating their agreement terms or rental agreement terms with the mall owners. Why? Because many things have changed. In these things, you always should remember that you have to find out a best alternative to the final negotiated agreement, which is suitable for both the parties involved in the negotiation. Please remember that negotiation is a collaboration. What do I mean? So if I plot concern for self or task orientation on one side, concern for others or relationship orientation on the other, this is how the entire thing will look like. If relationship orientation is the highest and you are very low on task orientation, you might end up in accommodating strategy, that is, you lose and you let the other person win, or avoiding strategy, which is both lose-lose. You also lose in the negotiation and you make the other person also lose if both relationship and task orientation is low. If task orientation is very high and relationship orientation is very low, you end up in competing strategy or win-lose. That means I should win, whatever happens to the other party, I don't care. That's called win-lose or competing strategy. If task and relationship orientation is somewhere in between, you end up in a compromise. That is, both the parties end up in giving up on some things which are important to them. I said negotiation is collaboration. So what is collaborating strategy? That means you win, I win. You need to be high on relationship orientation, that is concern for the other party, and you need to be very high on task orientation as well, that is concern for your own self. That is when you can come up with a strategy which is a collaboration, and you end up in a win-win situation for both yourself as well as the other party involved in the negotiation. Let us now get into closing the sale. From the point of view of a salesman, this stage is the most important. Whatever the salesman is doing, the end result which he or she is expecting is to close the sale, because that is counted as a number for the salesman, right? And when we talk about closing the sale, there can be three types of closure, which are 1. Direct close, 2. Alternate close, and 3. Next step close. What is a direct close? You just take the order, generate the invoice, and sell your product or service. That's called a direct close. Take any example, it can be a two-wheeler showroom, mobile store, or anything. Percentage of direct closes are not very high. It can be around hardly 10% of the total people you are meeting can end up in a direct close. A customer who's doing a direct close is very sure about what is the kind of product he is looking for, features, the variant, and so on, which is not very normal. But still it happens around 10% of the times. If you can make more direct closes, you are just lucky or you are very special. Next type of close is called as alternate close. Now everything is clear, but the customer might ask you to show some more options, some more products or services with a little different features, advantages, and benefits. Maybe some more discussion is needed. Everything is done, but probably he's not clear about the mode of payment. Whether he should he pay by check, should he pay by digital transfer, or he has to make a cash payment. These kind of things are called alternate close. Alternate closes are also quite common, but compared to the next type of close, this is also a very small percentage of people. What is the third type? Third type is called next step close. Remember, 80 to 90% of the customers you are meeting in your daily routine will end up in next step close. And what is it? You might have to follow up with the customer for the further steps. To take an example of two-wheeler, for instance, the customer might say, I want to give one more test ride to my father or my brother, or I have to take my wife on a test ride before I can finalize this particular purchase. That's the next step clause. Most of the customers you are meeting will end up in a next step clause. So make sure you take the contact details of the customer for sure. Once you have the contact details, you can't just end it like that. You must ensure that you ask the customer which is the right time to get back to the customer on the further steps. If test ride or home test ride is the next stage, you can ask, sir, when is the right time to get the two-wheeler to your home for the test ride? Please ensure that whatever time and date you have fixed it up, you are doing that at that particular time. It is very, very important. What I have normally seen is most of the salesmen are good till this point, but when it comes to follow up, they falter a lot. For this, I would recommend you to have a diary and make a daily task sheet. It is important for any profession, but especially for salespeople. If you ask me, it is a must. For example, if today you have talked to 3 customers who have said that they want to do some further steps, maybe a follow-up call, maybe a home visit, etc. And you know the dates at which you have to do that. If you have a diary with you, you can just directly take that particular date and make a note of it with the customer name and probably the contact number. So that on that particular day, when you open your diary, you are clear that yes, I have to follow up with this customers, and this was the next step which was discussed with the customer. Today, there are a lot of other technology tools available. You can have those kind of notes in your mobile phone. You can have it in a tab. You can use some ERP softwares which are available in companies to do that. But maintaining a diary for your personal reference is very, very important. Trust me, it gives you a lot of confidence in the work you are doing, especially in the sales stream. Any professional, not only a salesperson, anyone can use a diary, make notes or task list and get the benefits of it. I hope this is clear to you. Let me quickly summarize the closing. So once the customer approaches, the discussion happens, demonstration, proposal, negotiation, and closing happens. The final stage in the main sales process is closing of the sale. And there are 3 types: direct close, which is not very common, but very good from the sales perspective, which is taking the order and generating the invoice and giving the product or service to the customer. Second type of closure is alternate close, which is giving some more options to the customer before he or she decides. And the third and most common closing is next step close, where you as a salesperson needs to take some further steps, maybe a follow-up call or one more demo, etc. For that, you need to take the contact details and a time and date from the customer and do the follow-up. Let us now understand the case study or exercise for this course, Certified Sales Expert. Remember, completing this exercise and quiz is mandatory for certification. Here goes the exercise. Assuming yourself to be a salesman in Apple Store, write a detailed conversation between you and a walk-in customer. The customer is a businessman looking to upgrade his old Windows laptop to MacBook. Bifurcate the conversation to elucidate the different steps of sales process as discussed in the course. Now, this is like writing a script for a movie. You need to write what are the lines which you will say as a salesman and assume what are the lines which the customer, who's a businessman looking to upgrade his laptop, would say. Link for the quiz will be shared with those interested in certification. It is going to be a 20 MCQs or multiple choice questions to test the knowledge you have gained from this particular course. This is how the sample certificate will look like. The certificate will be issued to those who successfully complete the exercise and the quiz. We are almost at the end of the course right now. Let me quickly summarize what we have discussed and learned in this course. We started with introduction to the course and key objectives. Then we moved on to defining sales and sales process, and also understood the difference between selling and marketing. We understood the rule of 12 to create a great first impression. We understood the difference between probing and an engaging conversation. Also, we looked into a technique called QUIP for engaging conversations. We also learned a technique called LAER to handle objections of the customers, and then moved on to understand negotiation to win-win. Learned that negotiation is nothing but collaboration and not a compromise. Finally, we understood the closing of the sale and the 3 different types of closing which can happen in a sales process. We also understood the exercise or the case study which needs to be completed for certification in this course. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions or queries, or if you want to give feedback regarding this course, please email us at arunsacademyforsuccess@gmail.com. Let's end this course with a beautiful quote by Brian Tracy. He says, "Keep your sales pipeline full by prospecting continuously. Always have more people to see than you have time to see them. This is how you can end up being a great salesman." Thank you so much. Wish you all the very best.
Congratulations on completing this online course. We hope you derived a lot of value from it. What next? 1. Implement the learning from the course in your personal and professional life. 2. Like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. 3. If you want to get a certificate, please do email your interest to us. In order to get a certificate, you are supposed to complete a quiz as well as the exercise or the project as explained in the course. Once you complete your assessment, the certificate will be issued. Note that the price for the e-certificate is rupees 399 and for hard copy certificate is rupees 699 plus GST. This price is to ensure that we are covering our expenses of course creation and certification process. Once you email us your interest for certification, you will be receiving an invoice. Post payment, you will get a payment receipt as well as the link for the assessment. Getting the certificate as shown in the course is purely your choice. Thanks a lot for choosing Arun's Academy for your learning needs. Please do get back to us in case of any query or clarification, or if you have any training requirements. Do write your feedback regarding this course. We at Arun's Academy wish you all the very best. Keep learning and keep growing.